BS-Free Witchcraft is a production of the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network. Nerd and Tie produces podcasts ranging from actual play to true crime, and you can find more at nerdandtie.com or join our Discord by going to nerdandtie.com/Discord. Welcome to BS-Free Witchcraft, your monthly guide to the modern witchcraft movement. Mine's a lot of the usual, well, bullshit. I'm your host, Trey Dorn. It is April of 2025, and the world is a nightmare. So I wanted to talk about something that I find fun, and that is Satanic Panic era propaganda. Satanic Panic era propaganda. I enjoy it. And specifically, this month, we're going to talk about my favorite piece of Satanic Panic era propaganda, the Pagan Invasion. I think I've mentioned it on this show before. I know I've talked about it on my TikTok, but yeah, we're going to talk about the Pagan Invasion, but we're going to talk about like the structure of it. We're going to talk about how propaganda like this functions. That's what we're going to do. But before we talk about that, it is April, but that means that we are in the part of the year where I start asking you 4 questions, because in July, I am doing my annual feedback Q&A episode where you guys ask me questions and I answer them, or you give me feedback and respond to these episodes, and I address that feedback on the show. We've done this every single year of the podcast, and I would like to do it again. Obviously, if you want to submit your questions, feedback, concerns, comments, weird criticisms, what you want to do is go to bsfreewitchcraft.com/contact. That is bsfreewitchcraft.com/contact. I will not say your name. I never say the name of the people who submit stuff, but by sending it to that form, it tells me that you're okay with it going out on the show. I sometimes will read questions that are sent to me other ways, but if you send it that way, that is your best odds. I don't read every question I get sent. I don't read everything I get sent, but that is your best chance of getting it on the show, is bsfreewitchcraft.com/contact. God. I'm not doing another take. We're sticking with this take. This is the kind of night I'm having, guys. This is not my first time through the opening, and we are just going to plow ahead, or else this episode is never going to get recorded. Anyways, so just want to remind you, the deadline for those questions is July 11th, 2025 for this year's episode. So send them in, bsfreewitchcraft.com/contact. Yeah. Moving on. Let's talk about the Pagan Invasion. The Pagan Invasion is a production of Jeremiah Films. Jeremiah Films was founded by Patrick Matriciana and Carol Matriciana in California in 1978, although the company has since relocated to Jacksonville, Florida in the 2010s. They're best known for producing right-wing and Christian evangelical propaganda films, though really what they're best known for is their 1994 Clinton conspiracy documentary, The Clinton Chronicles, mostly because they got sued over it. If you don't remember the Bill Clinton conspiracy stuff from the 90s, yeah, I don't look into it. It's not worth it, but it's, yeah. Anyways, what a lot of us in the modern witchcraft movement know them from, though, is this show, The Pagan Invasion. The Pagan Invasion was a 13-part series they released in 1991 about a pagan invasion, sort of. Across the 13 episodes, they go from Halloween to Wicca to Mormonism to just any kind of Eastern religion. I seem to remember a Freemason thing in there somewhere, but it's been a long time. I might be confusing that for a different piece of propaganda. Any kind of Eastern religion in the series too. I think a lot of people forget that Satanic Panic swept up a lot of stuff in its wake, and it wasn't uncommon to see folks like posting like anti-yoga stuff as like satanic in this period. And a lot of that has to do with the paranoia around the Rajneeshpuram cult in Wasco County, Oregon. And you can go watch Wild Wild Country on Netflix if you want to know more about that. And paranoia about that group really comes from like the Jim Jones era. Like it's all kind of swept in. But this is peak Satanic Panic propaganda. And it's actually like the Pagan Invasion is actually a little bit formative for me. See, well, most people like have only seen these on home video releases sold through Christian bookstores. Like most of the people who have watched this show watched it because they grew up in really Christian households and things like that. I didn't. That is, anyone who knows my backstory knows that is not my experience. I did not grow up in a Christian household. I did not grow up in an evangelical like environment. So, what you might not know is that while most people have only seen this on like the home video release, I watched this on broadcast television. A lot of folks might not know that there are Christian television stations broadcasting around the country. And I grew up in Milwaukee. And occasionally I got bored and watched it, especially in high school because I had a TV in my room, but not cable in my room. And there were only so many channels, and one of those channels was Channel 30. And that I don't know if it still is because I haven't really lived in Milwaukee for, decades, but Channel 30 was the God channel. That was the Jesus channel. And so they used to run episodes of the Pagan Invasion like late at night. And I used to sit up and watch it. And I don't know if any other TV stations aired this particular show, this particular series, because like I assumed it must have been broadcast like across the country, but every time I like search for it, the only other like mention of it, like plenty of people have talked about the Pagan Invasion, plenty of people have like posted things about it online, but the only other person I've ever seen mention watching it on broadcast TV in the 90s, was a person talking about on Reddit watching it on Channel 30 in Milwaukee the same way I was. And so, yeah, they made this show in 1991, but they reran it throughout the whole 90s. They reran this, like, they made this in 1991, but I was watching this in, like, 1997, 1998. Yeah. And I watched the show as a comedy because, again, I didn't grow up in I didn't grow up in a Christian household, let alone an evangelical one, right? So I knew this was bullshit when I turned it on. Yeah. So I watched the show as a comedy. And also, the theme song to this show is unironically amazing. I am not kidding. I know this show is Satanic Panic era propaganda, but the over 3-minute theme song and opening like animation sequence that goes with it is frankly the most kick-ass TV show opening that ever came out in the 1990s. It was awesome. For video viewers, I'm going to play a clip. The audio viewers, you will hear a piece of the song, but trust me when I say you are not getting the experience that the people watching the video version are about to get for like now. Now, for those of you who only just heard the audio, who are listening to the podcast, for listening to the podcast audio-only version, the visuals involved zooming through a CGI castle on top of crystal mountains. And there's an awesome guitar riff. When the guitar riff comes in, like that whole thing, that comes in over the words Pagan Invasion and a lightning bolt hits. It's genuinely difficult to understand why they made the opening this awesome, because it seems to go against the very premise of the show. It's just like, you're really making this sound cool with this opening. And I've not been able to find out who the composer is for that or anything. Like, I know the company that did the computer graphics. Oh yeah, it was CGI. It was all CGI. And for like 1991, there was a lot of money spent on that opening, and they were going to get every dime out of that. But yeah, I love that opening. So after we get past the opening, we introduce our hosts. Our hosts are Carol Matriciana and Chuck Smith. Matriciana, who passed away from cancer in 2016, was, as previously mentioned, co-founder of Jeremiah Films. Her husband is still alive, but she passed away in 2016. Smith, who passed away in 2013, Chuck Smith, was a pastor and founder of Calvary Chapel, one of the largest organizations of charismatic evangelical churches out there. And also, Kelsey Grammer played him in a movie once. Look it up. This show is very well produced, and I cannot understate that. A lot of the terrible propaganda shows like this aren't well produced. A lot of them just don't have it. But real money was clearly invested in this series, and I'm betting that has to do with Chuck Smith's involvement. But like, it still looks super cheesy, but it has way more to do with the show being 35 years old than anything else. Like it being 1991 when they put this out. And this show is, again, a masterclass in propaganda. And there's a really interesting thing that happens when you watch propaganda meant to demonize you, like that is specifically about the subculture or religion that you're a member of, where you know what's true and what's false immediately, and and especially if you have like the academic background to recognize the parts that are abject hoax, like you begin to learn the structure of how they put these together. So what I really want to do here is talk about how the Pagan Invasion constructs an argument, how they construct a premise. And because the entire episode is constructing a premise, because propaganda has a purpose. And so we're going to specifically look at the first episode of the Pagan Invasion, Halloween Trick or Treat. All right, it's the first episode. It's also the easiest one to find. So if you want to go watch along and like see the whole episode, there's multiple copies of this one up on YouTube. Many people have reviewed this. I did, for research on this episode, watch the whole thing. But yeah, we're not going to watch the whole episode in this. So, but After Smith and Matriciana introduce themselves, they kind of start with a simple introduction, and so I'm gonna play about a minute long. I'm gonna play that now.
Halloween is a festival that conjures up images of ghosts, skeletons, black cats, witches on broomsticks, and little costumed children scurrying about the neighborhood.
Who are you? Vampire. Dracula's wife.
While there are some people who may be concerned about the origins of Halloween and its focus on blood, death, horror, and the occult, to millions of youngsters across the nation, it has been adopted as a time to pursue scary fun. It is an opportunity to dress up in ghoulish or fanciful costumes, to engage in the fantasy of being a witch or a vampire, ghost, or devil. Eager trick-or-treaters solicit candy door to door or bob for apples at Halloween parties. Others brave haunted houses and horror movie marathons, while the more daring visit cemeteries at midnight, play with Ouija boards, and hold seances in an effort to contact spirits of the dead.
Now, this episode's about Halloween, and so we start with an introduction to the holiday, which factually on its face, to start with, isn't anything to complain about. We're not saying anything really controversial in this first, minute or so of the argument. And that is predictable, because they're trying to make sure they don't scare you off the start. But you will note that they start to play some spooky music under there. Like, they started playing some spooky music under what is otherwise benign stuff. That music is there to emotionally prime you to be suspicious. It's just real basic, like, it's the beginning of the manipulation. But since there's nothing really else to argue with here, though, but I want you to pay attention to what Chuck Smith says next immediately. This is what follows that, like, just straight after.
One of the biggest promoters of Halloween is the public school system. School-sponsored Halloween-themed activities often include dances, costume contests, carnivals, and arts and crafts projects. Education officials admit that more effort is usually put into the celebration of Halloween than any other holiday, including Christmas and Easter.
Now, there's a couple things you might not have caught there. First off, the unsourced claim about schools putting more effort into Halloween than Christmas and Easter. And there's so many layers about what's happening here. First off, this piece of propaganda has two intended audiences. Two. The people it's trying to convince of their beliefs, which is, that's the obvious one that you probably figured out, that it's trying to convince people. But the second group is people it's trying to reinforce those beliefs in. People who are already on their side. People who are already in the culture to keep them in the culture. For the people who it's trying to convince, the unsourced claim just sounds like Halloween is pervasive, it's in our culture, etc. It's such a big deal. But to the second audience, to the crowd it's reinforcing the beliefs of. You have to remember that in 1990 and 1991, we were deep in the school prayer debate. Secular education is still under attack today, but it was very prevalent in the pop culture then. Very in the forefront and very mainstream to attack secular education. Education has always been the enemy of the evangelical movement. By emphasizing that far less attention is paid to Christmas and Easter, which is, as far as my experiences go, just bullshit. That's a lie. Winter holiday stuff at schools is all very Christmas focused and takes up the whole frickin' month of December in the school system I grew up in, at least. And I grew up in suburban Milwaukee. The reason why he's saying less attention is paid to Christmas and Easter is he's saying that celebrating Halloween is an attack on Christianity to that second audience, right? He's saying they focus so much on Halloween, but they won't focus on these Christian holidays, which again is not true. I mean, like, at most you might say because Halloween can sometimes happen on a school day that kids will dress up and do something, but like, it's not. It's just a lie that it's more focused on. He's just lying. But by using that comparison to Christmas and Easter, it's a dog whistle. It's a dog whistle to that second audience. Now, I'm not going to show you a lot of this, but the episode is going to move into the commercial nature of the holiday. It's going to talk about like costume sales for retailers and all this stuff. So we're going to skip ahead a bit. If you want my full reaction to every part of this episode, like every minute of this thing, my paid Patreon patrons have access to a bonus video of my complete live reaction to this whole episode of the Pagan Invasion when I rewatched it for research. Like, I've already filmed that, and I will have that up and on the Patreon when this goes up on the Patreon. So if you want to watch that, yeah. It's the whole bonus video is over 2 hours long of this like 47-minute episode because I pause a lot. And if you feel like watching me watch a piece of Christian propaganda and just complain about it for 2.5 hours, if you throw me $1, you can get access to it. So you can experience my pain with me. The rest of you shall be spared. Anyhow, In this bit, they also then continue to equate horror movies to porn and then bring in a sensationalized headline about occult murder. Normal stuff that before they move on to what I want to focus on. But you'll notice it is a slope. They're sloping up. They are going to adult things, how it's scary. They, effectively do a thing and compare again pornography and horror, put those together, and they're trying to make it more adult, but it's nothing too shocking. And then we cut to, again, as I said, some news clippings about cult murders, and we're mixing that in. And even though there's no relation and no context that connects those things, they're putting it side by side. What happens next, and this is where we get into the more important stuff, is a pretty lengthy interview with Glenn Hobbs, a so-called ex-Satanist. He claims to be a generational Satanist, and what you have to remember is that, again, we are peak Satanic Panic. The weird myths about secret satanic cults killing and sexually abusing children is at its height. And grifters would go around and talk to church groups about being former Satanists. And they would tell wild tales, which are wholly fictional, and including talking about how they themselves participated in these rituals where people were sexually assaulted or killed. And now you might ask yourself, why wouldn't law enforcement question these people to try and investigate these supposed murders and assault? I was involved in human sacrifice. I killed a man. Cop just sits there. The cops didn't do anything because there's zero evidence of it, and it was all made up. But also, in the case of Glenn Hobbs, would you believe anything that this man told you?
Now, Halloween night, they had again put me and the little girl in the back of this van, and we again drove off, which seemed like for a long time. We were drugged once again, and we finally came to this stop. They took the little girl out and they left me in the van. I could hear a lot of commotion that was going on outside. People that were screaming and yelling and this low murmuring and a moaning noise that was going on, like some kind of a low chanting noise that was going on. So I knew in my mind there was some type of a ritual going on because I'd heard that many times before. It was real common to see people fall on the ground and convulse and go into convulsions during rituals and stuff with the demonic presence that were around. And finally, a woman came to the back of the van and she said, "It's time to go." And she brought me out of the van, and I could see that there was just a lot of people around. Some were dressed in dark brownish kind of robes with hoods over them. They took me up and they led me up to this stone altar. And I remember I saw the little girl, and she was on the altar. Now at first, I just wondered what was going on because you never knew. I mean, they used the altar for a lot of different things. They could have just been sacrificing an animal over, could have been a sexual abuse from the high priest on to her. It was a hard thing to know for.
That interview is very, very long, and it feels even longer because of Glenn Hobbs. He's just such a boring guy. They got to put spooky music and scary images on screen sometimes when he talks because you will fall asleep to this man. He is human khaki, but this is a primer for what is going to happen. We spend a lot of time here talking about a fictional cult and fictional cult members. One which arguably what he says makes him at least partially culpable for murder. And there's no statute of limitations on that, Glenn. So I haven't looked you up enough to know if time has gotten to you like it has our host of this show. But I'm choosing not to show a lot of clips of what he says, because even though he says it in the most bored, banal way, he describes some pretty horrific things that, while they did not happen, I know can be triggering for some people to hear about. Anyways, we've been escalating into darker and darker stuff, and Chuck Smith makes, again, more. After we cut from the interview, Chuck Smith will make some more unsourced claims about ritual murders and out-of-context headlines to follow this up. And you might be wondering, where is this episode going next? After we've talked about the commercial side, and we have gone into this whole thing with this ex-Satanist talking about secret cults and human sacrifice and the weirdest. He mispronounces Athame in the most peculiar way, and I'll let you go find that out. Also, he says pumpkin's funny, but you can go dig out the episode to find that. But after all of this, where are they taking us? Where's the road? Because this is a journey. They are building up. Again, we went through like real things with horror films, and we went to Glenn Hobbs's fictional story. Where do we go from here? We go to us.
What you are looking at are actual rituals and spells being performed by practicing witches and druids throughout America and Europe. These are not actors or reenactments. They are real.
Most of Halloween's customs are the remainders of pagan superstition relating to Samhain, the Druidic New Year. The Druids were the influential priests, magicians and sorcerers of the nature religions that prevailed in early northern Europe. These native beliefs permeated Celtic culture for about 2,000 years, up until the introduction of Christianity. Today, a revival of the practices of Druidism, along with various forms of witchcraft and nature worship, are sweeping across Europe and North America.
That's right, with a splash of Margaret Murray, we're going into witchcraft, druidry, and neo-paganism. And they 100% went and talked to real witches and druids in this section. Like, under false pretenses, likely, the Pagan Invasion creators got interviews and footage of real people in the witchcraft and druid communities, and they let them speak in their own words. This is very important. They showed a lot of authentic stuff here.
The Druid orders are full of people from all walks of life, from soap opera stars to doctors and lawyers, dentists and toilet cleaners. Anybody can be a Druid.
I'm standing on Primrose Hill, which is one of the sacred sites in London, and it was here that the Druid order was inaugurated in its last most recent cycle in 1717, when a number of Druids from Wales and Scotland and Ireland and Brittany and England came together, and it is here that some of the ceremonies are held.
Sharing the Druidic tradition of nature worship is witchcraft. The title witch is from the Saxon word Wicca, meaning the one who practices sorcery. The Oxford Dictionary states that a Wiccan is one who is twisted, bent or warped. Despite attempts from modern Wiccans to sanitize the original intention of witchcraft, its practice cannot be divorced from demonology.
O guardians of the watchtower of the east, I, Ishtar, high priestess and witch, do summon and stir thee. I command thy presence at this our meeting, to guard over our circle and to witness our rites. So mote it be.
Now, obviously, the host is fibbing a bit here, including the meaning of Wiccan, which is it's not even like a normal etymology people put into that. But anyone who wants to know my opinions on the etymology of Wicca, and you can go back many episodes ago, I talk about that. But the host is being dishonest, which we expect her to be, right? But the interviewees are being earnest. Like, even when they sometimes get the facts wrong because the sources weren't that great back then, they are trying to be honest and open. And in many ways, like if you just look at the footage they include, it's a great snapshot of what Wicca looked like 35 years ago, just before like the mid 90s explosion. Like before solitaries were a thing in the 80s, but the solitary explosion of the 90s had not happened yet. So this is all like British traditional Wicca stuff. And this is what it looked like. You know, we're getting the good parts and the bad parts there. Yeah, and the bad parts, like a woman saying this kind of thing.
My mother was a witch, and my grandmother was a witch, and I have been a witch for as long as I can remember.
Dead grandmas all the way down. All right, but what we're doing here by talking to Wiccans, letting them speak in their own world, show authentic parts of the culture, is actually very sinister. You see, by priming the audience with Glenn Hobbs' fake story, again, we spent all this time with Glenn Hobbs' fake story, and now we go to real people. Hobbs says there are secret cults of devil worshippers, and then they show you a real religious and spiritual movement that calls themselves witches, that celebrates that Samhain is one of the big holidays for. The creators of the Pagan Invasion are linking these two ideas rhetorically. They're not directly saying it, but they are binding these. They want you to see these witches as Hobbes' satanic cult, the same way that Gardner wanted you to see Wicca as Margaret Murray's fictional witch cult. And by letting them use their own words, it means the audience of the Pagan Invasion is going to associate the otherwise innocent language of witches, druids, neo-pagans. They're going to associate them with this cult. Like, and I don't show all of Glenn Hobbs's interview, but he uses terms like athema, athame, there's more than one pronunciation, but like he uses terms like, he says athame in the funniest damn way, but he uses terms like that. He talks about altars, and then these people talk about athames and altars, and it's all about binding these ideas together and so when you hear people talk about witchcraft, if you've been primed by this, you will hear them use the genuine terms, right? You will hear them talk about, celebrating Samhain or the harvest and all this stuff, and you are going to make the link to the fictional satanic cult that Glenn Hobbs was supposedly a member of. Because that's the goal. That's the goal. And then, because we are far from done, they intersperse unrelated headlines about cult murders, which have nothing to do with Halloween even. But because we've talked about cults, we've talked about cult murders. Like, they literally bring up Charles Manson at one point in this episode. And I think we can see where this is all going, right? Right? Because as the episode continues, they bring in supposed experts then to back up their claims about satanic cults. I'm not going to drag you through this. I'm not going to show you the interview with the random cop they got to talk about this. I mean, he might not be random. Maybe he published something, but it's still like, I'm not going to drag you down with every single one of these. But it then just goes into more people with an agenda claiming to be experts, reinforcing the story and narratives of the Satanic Panic, but all of it feels like it has more weight because we spend a good chunk of the episode, a significant chunk of the episode, with real Wiccans and witches and druids and this stuff. And that's the game. Like, when we tell you don't engage with debates with evangelicals or right-wingers or anything like that, it's because of this. These people, these perfectly fine people, this whole generation of Wiccans went out and they like, and these druids, and like They talked to who they thought were like an honest documentary crew, and instead their position was then used, their earnestness was used against them to dishonestly create a presentation. When we talk about like people who get tricked into going into like Matt Walsh documentaries, it's the exact same thing all over again, right? It is the structure of the Pagan Invasion is the exact same structure that people like Matt Walsh use in their pseudo documentaries. It is textbook what they're doing. And that is the trick. So what we take from something like the Pagan Invasion, besides a fun laugh at how goofy it is and how wrong it is, we learn to look for these patterns in the other media that we consume. When someone brings you an article, when someone brings you a video, this is especially true in videos, video essays, documentaries, pay attention to that structure. Pay attention to it, because that is the method that this kind of story works with. Oh, yeah, and I would like, so I don't want to drag you down with all like the pseudo extras. There's a bunch of them they bring in at the end of stuff, but I just wanted to highlight two of my favorites. First off, this guy.
Satanism exists in this country as it exists elsewhere. It is appallingly evil. It is about murder. It is about child abuse. It's about sexual abuse. It is no joke and must be taken seriously and must be dealt with.
That is David Wilshire. He passed away in 2023, but he was a Conservative member of the UK Parliament who in 2009 was implicated in the parliamentary expenses scandal, and he compared his being investigated to the Holocaust, and he ended up stepping down in that. So, because he got like $100,000 of money that he shouldn't have. So, real moral guy there. Thanks, David Wilshire. And then there's this guy.
If they can ritually abuse children, if they can in any way sexually abuse children, anything to destroy a child's innocence or their trust or their wonder at the world, they will do it.
That is, and I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong probably, but that is Bill Schnoebelen. And if you follow, he wrote a whole bunch of books about different, like a whole bunch of Satanic Panic era propaganda books. But if you follow the timeline of everything he's ever claimed in those books, everything has to have happened between 1976 and 1980. And in that period, he was apparently a Roman Catholic, a Freemason, a Wiccan, who he claims he was initiated by Alex Sanders, and he was also a baby sacrificing Satanist. All within that 4-year period, he apparently was that, which is like, that's remarkable, because like Wicca's got a year and a day of study requirement in there, so that'd be that is quite the journey that we all believe is totally real, 100%. We all buy that, right? That he did all those things in that time. It isn't just making it up. Anyways, he's alive. He's alive and making weird YouTube content that you should not watch, because it's even worse than the stuff he says in this. It's bad, but he is still out there. Just for some lightheartedness at the end here. But the Pagan Invasion is, again, a prime example of what propaganda looks like. And I think it's a really easy way to study how it functions for people like you and me who have like an understanding of our own culture. And we know with retrospect the lies of the Satanic Panic, and can clearly identify where people like, Glenn Hobbs, because again, as we mentioned in the Satanic Panic episode a very long time ago on this show, that there has never been any evidence of any of the claims of the Satanic Panic. There were not and have never been massive conspiracies of satanic, the elite satanic cults. It's anti-Semitism. It's the entire, Look, I'm just going to be honest with you. Like, the whole Satanic Panic stuff, like, we get caught in the crossfire as witches, but in the end, it's just repackaged anti-Semitism. It's real Protocols of the Elders of Zion stuff. It's bad. It's there are, yeah, it's 99.9% of all conspiracies turn out to be anti-Semitism. And the ones that don't become about anti-Semitism. And it's because, here's the thing. Conspiracy theorists, people who are anti-Semitic love conspiracy theories, and they dominate the conspiracy theory space. So even if you find what looks like a fun conspiracy theory, because it will get locked onto by anti-Semitic people, they will make it anti-Semitic. They will drive it down that road and thoroughly embed the anti-Semitism into the conspiracy culture of that conspiracy theory. Like, you can even find ways to make, like, the alien stuff like anti-Semitic. So it's deeply depressing. And as a person who was deep in the conspiracy theory world in the 90s because I thought it was fun and lighthearted, and then I got to know some of these people and got to be horrified in real time. The Satanic Panic was all anti-Semitism at its core, just repackaged with Satanist put on as the label. But folks don't want to hear that. Sorry for the downer at the end. Again, if you want to watch me, as I said earlier, if you want to watch me react to this whole episode, if you join my Patreon, that is a thing that you can watch right now. If you become a paid member of my Patreon, you can watch me live react to this for 2.5 hours. If people like watching that, like if my patrons like it and demand more, maybe I'll record reactions to other episodes. But that is Patreon exclusive content. And also Patreon patrons get episodes like this a whole week early. In fact, actually, they got this one like a week and a half early because I had to travel for Easter. By the time this is public, I'm home already. So, but I had to travel for Easter, so I had to actually do this episode like half a week early. So they got this one like a week early. So it's just $1 a month gets you access, but if you sign up for some of the higher levels, you get access to my ebooks and at different times for the different stuff. And I want to give a shout out to people at the shout out level of Lindsay Dosey, Bruce Norville, Courtney, Claire Dennis, and Pamela Stariak. And that Patreon is patreon.com/TRAEGORN. If you did not know, that is patreon.com/TRAEGORN. And if you can't support me financially, I understand. The world is a nightmare and we're all going through it together. So just share this show on social media and tell all of your friends. Remember, you can follow me on a lot of different ways. First off, tradeorn.com is my personal website. And then bsfreewitchcraft.com is the website for this show. You can also follow me on social media. Primarily, I'm on Blue Sky at traegorn.bsky.social. I am on Tumblr at traegorn.tumblr.com. And as long as TikTok is around, I'm on TikTok with TRAEGORN is my username there. If you want to follow the show on Facebook, it is facebook.com/bsfreewitchcraft. Don't try to find my personal Facebook page. I will be very cross with you and send rude things to your mother. So don't. That is where I talk to my mother. But BS for Witchcraft, facebook.com/BS for Witchcraft if you want to follow this show on Facebook. Besides that, we are a part of the Nerd and Tie Podcast Network at nerdandtie.com, where you can hear a lot of other kind of cool podcasts and shows like Brina Guerin's Hex Positive, the other witchcraft show on this network. You can find her at nerdandtie.com/hex. So that is a great, awesome, kick-ass show. And remember, feedback episode. Submit questions and feedback and stuff before July 11th. In fact, actually, just go do it today if you want to do it. And go to bsforwitchcraft.com/contact. And with that, Magicians, I've kind of rushed through this. Remember, you can buy my novels. I write books. Go read my books. read my books. Anyways, with that, Magicians, I'm going to wrap this up. Remember, dirt in our fingernails, brick in our hands, and I will talk to you, Magicians, next month.